How could your property investment strategy change after listening to someone who has been part of over 4,000 property purchases in his career? Hi, I'm Sam Powell.
And I'm Jared Krause, and we are the co-hosts of the Property Pals Australia podcast. And today we speak with Scott Aggett, who is the founder of Hello Haus and is over 3 decades in the property investment game and more than 4,000 property deals under his belt across 3 continents. He's learned that buyers deserve a better way to buy and acquire a property, a way that actually helps them buy faster, for less, and without real estate games. And in this pod episode, we talk about Scott's experience and where he basically started from scratch and why he got into real estate.
Yeah, and you'll learn out, the Scott Aggett and Sam Powell connection and how I got involved in Hello Haus and how passionate we are. And Scotty shares some really key experiences and his knowledge as to why there is such a need for this representation on the buy side that I hope you do get a lot out of.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear his story about what he's actually done in his property career, even just before starting Hello Haus, which he shares, all these different milestones. Before we get stuck in this pod, obviously it's not the only way we can help you for free. Go away and get our How to Maximize Your Borrowing Capacity mini course at propertypals.au/resources. This is going to help you get a superior asset by getting a higher borrowing capacity. Let's dive into the pod. Welcome to Property Pals, the podcast where we share everything around how to build a property portfolio, from researching areas, financing, structuring, buying, selling, and reinvesting to live a life of financial independence. As a disclaimer, any information shared by myself, Jared, Sam, and the Property Pals team is strictly general and should not be taken as constituting professional advice. You should consider seeking independent legal, financial, and taxation advice from a qualified professional.
Property Pals podcast, and we have the amazing Scott Aggett with us today. It's been a long time coming, my friend. How you going?
I'm good, boys. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Really good. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
We're just talking.
So we were just gas bagging before we hit record buttons. It's like hang on, we're about to spill some beans and a bit about how you guys connected. How did this happen?
Sammy was stalking me for ages on the socials.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
That was weird, weird and creepy, but then I finally gave into it.
Yeah, it's like, should you date that person? Should you not? And then it's like, go in, see what it's like. And then it's been 3 years or so later, we're still putting up with me. But no, I had Scotty in my ears because I was like, the skill set of negotiation for me is a massive thing that people, because I definitely lacked, and not many people have that level of experience. And I was just get a lot of value out of listening to all his podcasts. And then the more I listened, I realized he was on the Gold Coast and he was doing these development projects. And I was just like, oh shit, he's in my backyard. And, just put the feelers out, reach out, have a chat. You never know where it goes. And then, a few years later, I got it was a few months later, actually. Scott reached out and, it was like, well, do you want to come and give me a hand? And I said, yeah, why not?
Well, the connection was even better than that, because you'd been listening to me on whatever podcast it was that I had appeared on, and then we both go to an osteo locally on the Gold Coast who's a mate of your families, both of you guys, isn't it? And Geordie's the middleman. Geordie introduced me to Sam, or Sam came via an introduction from Geordie, and then we caught up for a coffee and then ended up starting working together from there, which was, the rest is history.
I'll give you the meat and potatoes. I was getting my body fixed up, and Geordie was like, because I was talking about, I'm thinking about going out on my own. And then he's like, have you heard of this Scott Aggett guy? And I was like, yeah, all the time on podcasts. And he's like, he's one of my clients. And Geordie is actually Jared's cousin. So it's just this weird synergy. And I don't know, sometimes I'm a bit more spiritual these days, mate. The woo-woo, where it's like things keep coming into your life, and it seems to have worked out so far. So now we get to put you on the podcast and pick your brain about your life, which I'm really excited.
And it's probably awkward to say on the podcast that it hasn't worked out or it's about to come to an end. So yeah, everything's working out really good. It's all going good.
I definitely hear good things from Sam. So yeah, congrats on what you guys have been doing. I want to dig into it and start from the start though. That's cool with you, Scott.
Yeah, boys, I'm all yours. Happy to answer any questions. Just keep it above the belt.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Sam? Should we start with your background, Scott? Like, what about, how did you even get into real estate? Like at the start, like why real estate? I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did real estate as school work experience. So back in the day, at year 10 and year 11, I think we did work experience in Sydney at different industries that you wanted to do. And I was tossing up between being like some sort of salesperson or being a real estate agent. And I had a family member that was a successful real estate agent that went to my school that was 6 years ahead of me. And he's actually the Real Estate Institute of New South Wales president at the moment, Peter Matthews. So Pete and I went to school together, and he was working at Ray White in Bankstown at the time as his first kind of gig outside of school. And I went and did 2 weeks work experience with him, and I loved it. And I thought, this is the life. He's got a Mitsubishi Magna, and he's got a suit, and and he's living the dream. So I thought, effing boy made good out in Bankstown. So I thought, this is what I should do. And I loved the talk. My parents used to love kind of property, even though they never really did much with property at all. They kind of always used to stop at the real estate windows and things as we walked down the street. And I've got sort of really distinct memories of living in Palm Beach when I grew up as a kid on the Goldie, and going down the Gold Coast Highway, and all the real estate agent windows would be there with the little, crappy little terrible photographs. And mum and dad would just stand outside those windows looking. And I remember vividly that memory still. So I think it just stuck with me from an early age. And then finished school, went and did the real estate course, which is all you could do at that point. You either did valuation at uni, or you did a 1-year certificate of registration at TAFE. So I did that full time, and I was working at Ray White. So I worked at Ray White head office, and Pete very kindly took me under his wing. At that point, he was pretty high up at Ray White at an early stage, and I went and did 3 separate Ray White offices, including head office, and ran all their kind of auction rooms and set all that up. So I got to watch, hundreds and hundreds of auctions every month, which was awesome. I had to collect all the data, my job, from all of the offices all over Australia to report all the weekly and monthly numbers that they were writing. So I was really in tune with the real numbers people were doing, and what the active offices were, and all the award ceremonies and things. So I just kind of fell into it from there, and then went off to London, did that for 5 years, and had nothing else to kind of sink my teeth into for a career. So went and got a job straight away at which turned out to be fortuitous, at Foxtons in London, which at that point was kind of like the best way to explain Foxtons is when McGrath took off in Australia in that kind of early to mid noughties, basically they looked, copied and feel like Foxtons in London who had done it before them. That was the benchmark. So Foxtons had sort of really digitized the process and sexed it right up and made it cool, and they were really a dynamic agency in central London. So I was very lucky to work there, and then ended up getting sponsored twice and stayed for 5 years before I came back and landed at Bell Property.
Cool.
What a background. I didn't know that they did work experience in the 1950s. So
yeah, I'll tell you more about the 50s later.
Well, a question that's on my lips is, like, you've got obviously such deep domain experience on the sales side, but like, how's that experience as a real estate agent now shaped your approach in the property negotiation when you're buying property?
I think because you understand the nuts and bolts of how to put the transaction together, right? And that once you really understand the fundamentals of the buying process, all of the different methods of sale, how to juggle the vendor's expectations, how to juggle buyers' expectations in a multi-offer situation like that as well while you're running a campaign, and how to hold all that together with glue through, an auction campaign or a general sales marketing campaign. Those things stick with you for life. They're ingrained in my psyche in terms of understanding the human psychology and different things you can say at different points of the journey to get a result. So that really helps me on the negotiation side. And I think from my experience, if you came into the buyer's agent side secondary, and you've never been a real estate agent, I think you're missing a huge part of the game. And I don't know that you'd ever catch up, because you just don't understand the games that are being played against you in real time. you don't understand the role that the real estate agent really has to play in terms of managing all those expectations. Because as you've seen, Sammy, watching me work from the inside out in terms of putting deals together, a lot of what I do is almost acting on behalf of the real estate agent to make their life easy. And if you don't know how to make their life easy, I don't know how you can pull those strings. So, an example of that might be that when I write certain offers, I'll write an email that I know that the agent is going to forward to the vendor, and I'll write it in such a way that they could never say that to their vendor because they don't want to ruin that relationship, because they're working on behalf of the seller. But I know that they want to say that to their seller because I've asked all the right questions. So I basically throw myself over the hand grenade and line it up in that email and absolutely smash the vendor or the market, which they kind of just politely forward on, I'm sure, and it helps do all the heavy lifting in closing those deals. So it's little nuances like that, and unless you know how to balance those things, it would be really difficult.
So I want to dig into more of that in that as an awesome example. How did you get, was it Bell and then move into negotiations? Like, how did you bridge the gap from, agent to negotiator?
Well, I think I ended up doing about 15 years or so at Bell, maybe a little bit less, might have been 13, 14 years. So I started off as a residential sales agent, basically at that point when I came back from London, because I was doing new business property management mainly in the UK, which was great because it was very much like a negotiation role. Like, you had people coming in and you were just closing lots of deals really quickly. So I love that. And that kind of set me up for a lot of how I do the role now. So Sam will laugh at this because it definitely makes me really old. But the way that we had our business set up in Foxtons, my boss was Danish, and I don't know if this was just an old school thing that he did, but he didn't want to really use computers at all. He wanted us to have a Rolodex with business cards or cards in it with their names and phone number and rate all of those buyers in order. And all I did was cherry pick those best buyers and close deals all day. So I think in one of my first months, the record at Foxtons, something like 18 or 19 deals, and I did 29, I think, in the first month or first couple of months.
Wow,
and I just hunted in that space. Yeah. And I do the same sort of thing on the negotiation side in terms of trying to cherry pick those customers and get those results done quickly. How I transferred, I guess, are you thinking more? Are you asking more along the lines of why did I leave and why did I kind of go and set up what I did? Is that more the direction that you want to get into?
We'll get to Hello Haus for sure, but that's basically you as your stomping ground for negotiations, is selling new property management in London, and then did you come back to Australia and get into
into resi sales role, or into resi sales, and I worked for Bell Property when they were previously owned by the two founders before it was sold to Peter Hanscom, and Chris Meehan was the Kiwi guy that set it up, and Chris was a really super talented negotiator and agent and would write many millions in personal commission back in the day, like in the early 2000s. He was the one that introduced Prince Freddie with the Princess Mary, not Prince Mary. That'd be weird. Yep. So that's another claim to fame that I haven't spoken about. I've DJ'd at Chris's house for the Danish prince.
What?
And Princess Mary while they had a quiet dinner party. I had to put some music together for Chris at the last minute at his house in Darling Point. Yeah, so there's a lot of stories about them meeting at the Slip-In. This is off kilter, this story, but yeah, all the media think they met at the Slip-In bar in Sydney, which is really famous for that meeting point. But they didn't meet there. Chris was an Olympic sailor before he was a real estate agent, and him and Prince Freddie were mates from sailing for many years. And he would constantly come to Australia and stay with Chris, and they had been out on Chris's boat all day, and they met on the boat. They didn't meet the Slip-In. So even when they'd come to Sydney and stay, all the paparazzi would think that they would be in the city at some giant penthouse that was like a government paid penthouse, and they'd be staying on Chris's boat at Woolloomooloo Wharf outside his apartment. So we used to get all those insights into all that stuff when they were dating and just started just before they got married, the royal wedding. Anyway, sure. That's off in a different direction altogether.
Well,
so what's that?
So episode number 13, we'll jump into your DJ experience.
And then no, DJing hardly. But I came back, did the sales agent, and I was under kind of Chris's wing as well as other lead agents that were there. So I got a pretty good grounding at Bell Property doing things, and they're a premium brand, so I got lots of exposure to the sort of upmarket eastern suburbs, lower North Shore, inner west market in Sydney, which was awesome. And then they were kind of not doing particularly well as a business. They tried to get into development and do a whole lot of things too fast, and the market changed. And they were in a position where they were almost going to go out of business altogether. And my boss at the time, Mark Murphy, who was my sales manager, approached me and Richard Shaloub, who was another young guy at my age at that point that was a newish agent. And we went to the management and asked to take the first franchise and roll out the Potts Point office. So we went and built the Potts Point office, and then simultaneously we went and built the Walsh Bay franchise as well, which was on the waterfront under the Harbour Bridge, and did that for a number of years. And then after I sold those two businesses, I then went out with a different business partner and set up Bell Property Surrey Hills. So all in all, just under 15 years of doing it, and I think probably about 9 of those as a principal, and lead sales agent, which was fun.
It's amazing what you can do in a 45-year period in life, mate.
47.
Oh, I do. You're not 45,
Thanks, mate.
But it's really like, I think for people listening that are into property investing, time in the space is better than timing the space, and I believe that's the same for a career as well. And the compounding that you can get from that is insane. As you get to Hello Haus and what your goals will be with Hello Haus, it'd be cool to see where you guys are at in a year or two from now with it. Whatever does happen. But how did you get from there to Hello Haus, and what was the sort of your motivation for starting Hello Haus, I guess?
Yeah, I should never have done the last franchise, the Surrey Hills office. And I've said this openly lots of times, and that was kind of a 4-year period that I just didn't enjoy a day of it, really. And I did it because the money was good and the opportunity was good, but I was already over it when I sold the Potts Point and Walsh Bay office, and I should have walked away at that point, but I just didn't know what the alternative was at that stage. In the back of my mind the whole time, I was thinking, what I do well and what I love is negotiating. What I don't love is, lying to vendors to win the listing, or losing it because all the other agents I'm competing against are overhyping the business to get that lead to sign on. And I don't want to underquote to buyers all the time, because that's just a horrible soul-sucking game to play. But I just felt like you couldn't win unless you were going to lie in that industry. And I thought, well, there's got to be a better way. Like, all I want to do is negotiate. There's got to be a way that, people are already out there doing this all day, every day. On a Saturday, I meet hundreds of people. They're all actively out there looking for property, and they seem to love it, or they want to go out and do that. And it's a real contact sport in Australia. Like, everyone talks about it at dinner parties, at barbecues. They'll openly say how much money they've spent or how much money they sold for, or whatever it might be. Yeah. So they've got no problems doing the property hunt and being involved, but they lack skills. So I was like, what do they lack skills in? Well, they don't have a clue what to pay, and they don't know how to control the negotiation or negotiate against other agents to get the best outcome. So I thought there's got to be a way of building a business in that space. And then I think it was probably, again, fortuitous timing that I got to see the rise of buyers agents in Sydney at that point in the last few years of that role, maybe in that last 4 years. And what I noticed was the buyers that I was dealing with face-to-face would often disappear, and a buyer's agent would appear for them. And I'd been working with them for some time, potentially, and they're just frustrated they couldn't buy something, over a number of months with all the local agents. And then a buyer's agent all of a sudden is representing them. I thought, this is interesting, because they've had a go, they can't do it, and they've outsourced it to somebody else. But every time I had an experience with a buyer's agent, there was basically no negotiation or very little negotiation. All the deals were done incredibly quickly. And if they did have a buyer, we would see them open for inspections. If they didn't have a buyer, we would never see the buyer's agent. So they weren't doing any research. They weren't watching the market. They weren't intimately involved in our local area. They just kind of, floated in the breeze. It did a transaction really quickly, and out the door they went. And my experience this is just my own firsthand experience, is that most of the time they paid an absolute premium with a cherry on top. And they did that because they didn't want to compete openly on the market with other buyers. They wanted that opportunity solo, and they were prepared to pay a premium for it. And what I'd found is those buyers that had buyer fatigue and had outsourced it to a buyer's agent were just over it, and they were happy to pay a price to get that job done. When I looked into the cost of using a buyer's agent and then the value prop of how much money they save or the time they save, it just didn't equate in my head as fair and equitable for the consumer. So I thought, okay, well, this is interesting because now I know there's an alternative way for people to buy. And again, it doesn't seem to be performance driven. So there's an element here of people are prepared to pay a professional service for this job. But the shortfall here is that it's very expensive and it doesn't really seem to be aligned with their best financial interests. They're not, fighting to save them any money. So I looked at it and I thought, okay, great. Well, then I think there's scope here to build a negotiation service of some description. And then the only way to do that is to build it as a performance-driven service. I've got to be able to show people, okay, well, my name is on the line here, so I'm going to effectively guarantee you that I'm going to make a saving or I'm not going to charge you. And that was really going to be my point of difference. And that's really where it started for me. And I probably had that in my head for 8 to 10 years before I actually pulled the trigger and did it. So it was just a kind of a side project, and then decided to give it a crack.
Wow, that's cool. That's really cool to hear. I love the just the ethos and the morals that you have within the property space and doing the right thing for people, and that being a really good reason to start it. I started buying small online businesses, and then people wanted me to teach them. And my goal was just to prevent people from buying a lemon and overpaying as well. Very similar. But I can see where you've seen there's a gap in the market of buyers agents just not, just doing their job, just buying. But what actually these customers that they've got buyer's fatigue, like you said, they've gone and said, hey, I want you to, buy me a property. But what they're actually really wanting is them to buy them a property at a good price and do the negotiations. But that's really not a part of what the service is that's being provided with most buyers agents
there's good, there's great, there's rubbish in every industry. So I just think, like from what we've seen, definitely there's there's an affordability aspect that the great and even the good, they do charge a hefty fee, but there's the majority of Australians are really just going it alone, and they're the ones that need the most assistance. So that's I guess that's sort of, in my mind, how can you help a lot of people through probably one of the most stressful periods of their financial life is buying the largest asset. And the questions, I just sat in the room with Scott too, and these one questions save $20,000 just by knowing that what question to ask, and that's the skill set of it that people will never understand because you're only doing it once in every 11 years on average. So
yeah, absolutely.
And also, agents are trained to make you feel like you had a win. Right? So, you don't ask that one question that Sam's referencing and you pay the extra $20,000, but the agent will make you feel all warm and fuzzy that you bought it at the right price and that you're a really smart negotiator and you did really well for yourself while they fleece you 20 grand, or 50 grand, which is what Sam and I think is probably the average amount of money that the general public leave on the table in a house purchase.
Yeah, but what are our average savings at the moment?
What are ours?
Yeah. For each client?
The average for us is 1.3 mil purchase price, and the average saving for us below the client's target price after Sammy's accurate analysis is $41,600. So, for us, we've proven that there's money to be saved below where the comparable sales evidence sits, and it's through expert analysis and expert negotiation that you can derive those savings and keep that money in your pocket rather than giving it to the seller or the agent. So we know now we've got product market fit. We know we've got proof of concept and that there's a great business there, and we can unpack that as much as you want to. But I think the key thing for me though was doing something really transformational in that space and making it not just another. I didn't want it to be just a buyer's agent. In fact, I wanted it to be a buyer's agent disruptor, if you like. I hate that word, but that's really kind of where I wanted to go, is do something that was an anti-buyer's agent. So creating my own lane there, but really it was to transform the way that Australians buy property. And I wanted to do that in a mass market environment. I wanted to have a huge swing at it and make it affordable for Australians to do it. So that's still the mission for us. We're doing around 30 to 40 transactions a month. There's a path to us, I think, our next goal of probably getting to 100 transactions a month. And then the sky's the limit. We think we've got an affordable solution to it, which we can unpack and talk about why and how it works. But I'm really pleased and happy with the decision that I made to leave the industry and then go and do something. But it's definitely been a journey. There's been lots of mistakes that I've made with the company that, I had to go through those steps to realize where the opportunity really lay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get into those lessons that you've learned. What, just for people listening, like when you say you do 30 transactions and you want to get to 100, what does a transaction look like, as a consumer, coming in wanting to use your product? Is it like, buyer's agent coupled with some negotiation, like somebody wants to come to you to acquire a property? What do they get? What do you guys do, sort of thing?
Yep. So some of our customers would come just for analysis only. So they'd have a property in front of them that they're interested in purchasing, that they've seen, and they'll pay us to just run that accurate analysis for them, which we do. But it's a tiny portion of the work that we do. It's probably 1/100th of the revenue that we write in the business, if that, and 1 in 100 customers would come just for analysis.
Probably not the best customers for you either, right? Like they're trying to make the deal work, I guess.
Well, we're happy to help everybody, and if that's what they need to give them the confidence to act, then yeah, happy to help them and give them that clarity around the right price to pay. So no issues on that front. But really, you'll hear me a lot talk about this, whether it's today or in other podcasts and stuff like that, and everything that we do. But analysis and negotiation go absolutely hand in hand. And if you might have a great idea of what to pay, but then you've got to pay that. Or work out how to get to that number or below that number, ideally, which is what we pride ourselves on. So I think just getting analysis is just cutting a corner. It's one part of the equation. You still need its sister in terms of the negotiation to follow through and control that process to ensure you get it at the right number. Yeah, but really, what they get for us when I talk about 30 to 40 transactions a month, I mean, that's pretty dry to talk in that type of language. But really, 30 to 40 people we help get into their ideal home or an investment property that's right for their fit. So we do about, it used to be 75% owner occupiers, 25% investors. I'd say the investor market is pretty strong in 2024. So that number is creeping up. Sam might know the data better than I, but it's in the last 2 months, it's been closer to 50-50. I don't know whether or not that's just a marketing thing from our perspective that's attracting investors that see value in using the service, or it's a general theme at the moment that there's just a ton of regional and capital city house buyers that are looking for that professional help and realise that it's a cost-effective service that's getting good results. Sam might have some better insights into that in terms of the numbers.
Yeah, in regards to the numbers, I think the lending to investors has definitely increased. So there's that appetite, like the market cycle that we're in. Obviously, you see a lot of people since, let's say, 2019, that lockdown period. We've seen this boom in the Australian property market, and people are talking about it. A lot of people love talking about property, the barbecue arena, and then you start hearing the success stories of we've got clients that we're doing 1 year reviews, and the amount of money they've made is it's a lot easier and a lot quicker to do that in 1 year than working for it and saving your pennies. So that over a couple of years of this, I think it's bringing a lot more confidence into the market, and obviously interest rates having been on hold for a number of months now, and the sort of consumer sentiment is definitely coming back. So I think that confidence to now pull that trigger to go into an investment property is probably a little bit more easy for people that have been sitting on the sidelines, because they're seeing the opportunity cost that they've missed out by, as you said at the start, Jared, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market as well. So we're big advocates of talking about this opportunity cost that people are missing out on. So I don't know, maybe it's just over time, mate. The Hello Haus name is obviously building a lot of trust in the industry. So we're just growing, and I don't know, it's good.
It's cyclical as well, right? Like there'll be investors today, and if the market changes or rates change or whatever, the investors may not be there tomorrow, and the owner occupiers will be there. So, and that's the reason why we're not specifically focused on investors, or not specifically focused on local buyers advocacy, working for owner occupiers buying their own home. And that was very much the reason why I wanted to build this as a nationwide business. And it was really built from the viewpoint that it was a lifestyle by design, Jared. Like I was so burnt from the Surrey Hills 4 years when I had that franchise that I said to my wife that I want to, and we moved to the Gold Coast and started having our kids. And I said, I want work from home. When I do get back into this and build this business, I want to be in T-shirts and boardies and no shoes, and I don't want to see any customers, and I don't want to see any property. Yep, don't inspect any property. So really that was the basis of me building Hello Haus, was born out of as well my experience prior to that in terms of how burnt out I was from that corporate life. A suit 6 days a week, shiny BMW, all the rest of it, and over that whole lifestyle.
Yeah, they're always having your face on, ready to, smile at everybody and, all the inspections and all the,
on the billboards, mate. They used to be Aggett, build property, come on in.
So I kind of want to be sold the product. I want to know a little bit more about, the buyer's agent service in terms of what, just with your experience and what goes into, well, it doesn't have to be a big, long explanation, but like if I'm going to use you guys as a buyer's agent, like what does the process look like? Do you find, look, you use I know a lot from Sam and I know a bit, but I want to hear how you sort of fit into it as well, Scott. Like to go, like I've got acquisition. Do you guys help me with like an acquisition strategy? And then do you go through and find that based on the data? And then, what does it look like?
First of all, wash your mouth out because I'm not a buyer's agent.
We're not. Yeah. What differentiates?
We're not buyer's agents. Yeah.
This is good. This is good. This is why we need to mention it. Like
I want to stay out of that cesspool. I'm not a buyer's agent. No, I'm just joking. And
before
I get shit canned by too many people, there's plenty of good local buyer's agents that are doing good things. We're not talking about. But if I'm putting down that part of the industry, I'm not having you go up with people that are doing good things. There's lots of those people, but generally speaking, I'm trying to do something interesting in this industry. What we do, look, it's born out of the most important thing that I say to a new customer that come on and to explain the difference between us and a buyer's agent is this. It's born out of my experience of 30 years in the industry, circa 4,000 property transactions. So it's my best thinking of how I believe that you should have professional help to represent you in this journey, whether you're buying your own home or you're buying investment property. So right or wrong, this is my best thinking over many tries at it for different customers and for myself. And personally, I'm up to property number 30 now as well. So I've done lots of transactions, lots of buying and selling and things. I've got my own experience of going through it emotionally. So I think I've got plenty of first-hand knowledge to be in a good position to advise people. So 3% of Australians outsource to a full-service traditional buyer's agent model. 97% of Australians would otherwise go it alone. We've built the only hybrid service that exists in the country that really works with the 97% of Australians that are otherwise going to do this themselves. And it's born out of my experience, this model, the way that I've set it up to address three fundamental issues that I have with the buyer's agent traditional model. First is, and we've spoken about this already, I believe it's too expensive. Okay, so I don't see there's great value in it, generally speaking. And I think it can be done cheaper. So there's too much fat in that model, which leads to point number 2, which I think is it's not directly financially aligned to the customer's best interest. So there's no transparency, there's no accountability, and there's no one talking about how much money they save their clients. It's all very transactional. So I think those two things are a pain point for me. But bigger than that, the main reason is if I take your buyer brief, Jared, and I go out and look through my lens and I select properties that I believe tick those filters that you're looking to achieve. And I come back a couple of weeks later and present you with 2 or 3 options that I think are going to meet that brief. How are you going to benchmark the value of those options? Because you've not seen all of the deal flow. You're not in control of your money. You've effectively outsourced it to somebody else, and you've got no way of confidently knowing that that's the best decision that you should make for your hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. Right, so I think that is the issue that I believe is the biggest problem with that traditional model. So what we've done is we've built a service that includes you in the process. Yep. So the way that we do that, we know all of our customers are super busy with family, friends, and work, but we include you in the process through the AI tool that I've built to build out a pre- and off-market strategy for you. And we've included you in the process in the strategy, in the hotspotting data, if you're an investor client, so you can understand what all your options are. And we come with it with an unbiased approach. We've got no horse in the race, and we'll take you on a journey if you're an investor looking right across the country. So if we focus on the actual nuts and bolts of what we do, whether it's an owner-occupier or an investor, we start with understanding what the 5 non-negotiables you have for your buyer brief. So mine might be these days, just hypothetically as an example, Mermaid Beach, $2.5 million, knockdown house, north to rear garden, east of the easement. Now, any agent worth their salt in Mermaid Beach knows where east of the easement is. It's a row of grid streets between the council easement line and the sand. So not only have I narrowed it down to one core suburb of interest, I've narrowed it down to a row of streets within that suburb. And there's no grey area around the asset class. I want a knockdown house with a north to rear garden. Now, when you do that and you get really defined around what you're looking to achieve, and you can talk crystal clear to an agent, almost like you're talking to a 10-year-old that can understand that brief, that allows them then to pay attention to it because it's easy to read and it's simple to understand, and they can quickly ascertain, now that they know that you're incredibly laser focused, whether or not there's properties there or sellers there that meet that criteria to match them up with pre and off market opportunities. Right, so that's how we find pre and off market opportunities. So we've built a digital tool around this using AI. We call it House Finder. So we take your 5 ironclad non-negotiables, whatever they may be. We get you incredibly laser focused down to 1 to 2 core suburbs if you possibly can, because the best buyers get laser focused down to a very tight area. And then we extract all the agent information out with our AI tool, and we're able to communicate your buyer brief, and we send it every single week without fail until you've bought a property. Now, we do that for investors and owner occupiers. Now, the raw data from our business, that goes out to 174 real estate agents in that core area every week on average per customer, and it generates us 1.6 true off-market listings per customer per week. Now, some of our clients are getting 0 because they've got a tough brief and they're looking for a very specific property, blue kitchen, pink door, that kind of thing. But the vast majority of our clients are getting many more than that. Some of them are getting as many as 10 or 12 off-market listings a week. So it just depends on the strength of your brief, the volume or the turnover in that location, and, how realistic you are. So there's no magic wand when you're trying to find things pre and off market. If you've got a realistic brief, it'll create opportunities. If you don't, it's going to be very challenging. So we start with that process the whole time. The way that we've built the hybrid service and that we include you into that process, Jared, is that email that goes out to the agents goes with your name, your email address, and your phone number. And that's a very deliberate strategy for us, because this is the way that we include you in that process. And we put you confidently in control of your own money, because now you can see all of the pre and off market listings being sent directly to you, whether they call, email, or text you. We want you to set up your notifications on realestate.com with the blinkers on for that very specific brief that you're looking to achieve. And you take those shortlisted properties that you like, and you're going to choose properties to shortlist based on street appeal, floor plan, the conditional size of the home, topography, aspect, privacy, all of those things, location within the suburb. You shortlist them through to a buyer coach that we appoint you in our team, and that's your expert negotiator. They're buying 10 to 15 properties a month on average. That buyer coach is then going to run with it and work behind the scenes and liaise with the rest of our professional team. We're going to understand from that agent a series of key questions, things like, is it still obviously for sale or on the market? It's a clear, simple one. What buys it? What's the highest offer you've rejected, if they've rejected an offer? Understand a few key questions around due diligence, understand what market rent would be, or if it is rented currently, what's it rented for and when the lease end is, and understand a really key thing that distorts a lot of people's view and ends up sending them through, a dead end or a rabbit hole. And that is to simply ask the agent, is your vendor ready to sell today? Yeah, and then I just shut up. And the reason I want to know that is because what's the point of me chasing this if that vendor needs to see 2 weeks or 3 weeks of marketing to be educated? So we just want to, understand where this property needs to be positioned, what level of urgency we need to take, because we strike incredibly quickly if it's the right property. So once we've established that information, we can put a red line through it, or we highlight it as something that we need to double down on. If it's an owner-occupier, we then get the client to go and physically inspect that property. If it's a investor, we would go down a separate path. So once the client has given us the thumbs up, Sam's team takes over on the analysis side. Typically within 3-4 hours, we have all the due diligence back. We're looking for the obvious ones like, fire, flood, easements, major power lines, and a laundry list of other, due diligence green ticks that we're looking to achieve before they roll into looking at what last sold for, the growth rates in that suburb, supply demand metrics, days on market data, auction clearance rates, then get right into the weeds around comparable sales evidence and competing listings. the beauty of the bit that I said to you before about analysis and negotiation is this is a really key part for us where we can add a lot of value. So at that stage, we ask Sam and the team to analyse those properties down to a $5,000 increment. So there's no grey area with our business. We're not going to say it's, offers over $595. This might sell for $650 to $700. We're going to tell you very specifically it's going to sell for $645 or $710, and it's out of your price range, whatever it might be hypothetically. So clients can take a lot of confidence around those numbers, and we take a lot of pride around the accuracy of those numbers. So I pay Sam and the analysis team in the business based on the accuracy of their data. That's really important for us to be accountable and be transparent. For 6.5 years, the business, we've tracked over 1,000 market analysis we do for our clients every year. And we've got an accuracy rating within 2% on the conservative side. So we know we're incredibly accurate with that data. We don't always get it right. There's no exact science in property. But we feel like because we're really focused on how that moves the needle, that we can confidently give our clients the best shot at understanding the right price to pay. And that leads us into negotiation hand in hand, and we can easily quantify the value that we add there in negotiation. We ask you after you've read that accurate analysis report to set what we call the walkaway price, the target price in our language. And that target price is the strategy that I then go and build to control the negotiation to secure that property at the earliest time frame and at the lowest possible price. Now, our average purchase price, as we said, is $1.3 million nationwide. And my average saving below the client's target price is $41,600. So the fee that we charge, our clients are typically about 5 to 6 times better off just in the negotiated savings on the average customer journey, let alone the time that we save in that process, with the stress that we alleviate, the games that we alleviate from the agent game plan, the lack of transparency on price. And we'd like to think that we can help generate better quality properties, get you in a position where you've got greater choice than you would otherwise if you go it alone, reduce your buyer competition, and then end up just with a much better streamlined service and a much happier process for the client. So that works really well for our clients. We're buying on average in 28 days, so we transact 7 times the speed of the average consumer in Australia, according to the big banks. So yeah, we think for what we do and what we charge, it really resonates with our clients, and that's part of the reason, or probably the reason why we're growing so quickly. We tripled the business in the last 12 months, and we'll probably triple the business again in the next financial year going forward.
Cool. Congrats. Yeah, congrats on what you built. The service sounds awesome. When it comes to negotiations, you mentioned before that, there's some things that you make it very clear and easy for the agent to understand, and you make it super easy for the agent, right? Do you, I use a lot of data, and I just have one price. I typically, my philosophy around negotiations is like, I just have one price that I want to pay, and I just say to them up front, it's like, basically this data shows, and I know the market, and this is for, I'm acquiring online businesses for people, is that I know the market, this is the data, this is what these assets are selling for in this price range. I'm not here to play games. If you want something over this, that's fine. We won't pay it. This is our highest price. This is our only price, and we'll pay fair market value for it. And then I don't play games. If they want to, and I'm not trying to like undercut them and undersell them and play games, right? I'm just saying like, this is like fair based on the data and based on me knowing the market, being in it every day. What sort of elements do you use when you're negotiating in terms of data and approach, I guess? I want to get into the psychology and approach of it as well, because I'm sure you've got some great things around that. But yeah, how much of it is data?
First of all, I think your strategy is very, very similar to how I negotiate and buy property. I think it's very similar. So the data plays a big part of it, because I keep saying it and I'll continue to say it. It absolutely goes hand in hand with good negotiation is really accurate data. But the interesting thing about real estate negotiating, which I think is a bit of a shock to some people that are in the industry and certainly to the average Joe buyer, is that you'll never hear me really talking about comparable sales or data in a negotiation, and that may be true to what you do as well. You may or may not disclose, those other data points that you looked at that arrived at a figure that you want to pay for that business. But I don't get into the weeds with an agent. Like, I wouldn't ring Sam if Sam was selling agent and say, hey, Sam, well, 12 Smith Street sold for this and 14 Jones Street sold for that, so therefore this place that you're selling is only worth X. because Sam, as a good leading agent, will know all of those sales and some. So you'll never win that game when you're dealing with a good agent. So a good agent in that situation will say, yeah, but, 15 Christine Street, we just sold off market on Thursday night for $50,000 more than that. So, mate, this is worth exactly what that is, or this is worth more again.
And there's so many variables within that asset as well, like between this property that's like even next to another property on the same street. There's so many variables within that asset.
Yeah, totally. So you'll just never win having those arguments with a good agent. They'll just talk their way out of that hole and put you in a position where you have to come up with a different solution to try and negotiate with them. So we definitely go really hardcore into the data to get those accurate set of numbers, but then that's the last you'll ever hear me talk about or refer back to the data. And then really I just fall back on the theory that the seller will sell it for the lowest price they're prepared to sell it for, and the buyer will pay the highest price they're prepared to pay. The rest is just a negotiation and a bluff game in the middle. And when you're negotiating against a good agent or someone that's been in the industry typically for quite a while, that conversation is just in 2 seconds. Yeah. It's like, they know what their client will sell for or thereabouts, and I know what my buyer will pay or thereabouts, and it's done reasonably quickly. And there shouldn't really be a need to make it any harder than that. But a lot of agents with big egos, and not necessarily the best agents, typically agents that have been in the industry for a long time and haven't been hugely successful, or newer agents to the industry, just can't help but get in the way of a deal. It's really interesting that I get to negotiate against some of the most, I get all sorts, and it's great to see that cross section. But I've also had the luxury of being able to negotiate against some of the top, 1% of agents across the country, and have done so multiple times in some instances against the same agents. And it's really interesting to see how they all negotiate differently, the patterns that they do, the lies that they do, they do as well. Yeah, some of them. So, it's interesting to see how that all plays out. I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Now, I just wanted to pause this episode here. As you can tell, there's a lot of nuggets of gold here, and it is a beast of an episode. In part 2, which is coming up next, we talk about what selling agents do to make you pay more money at auctions. We also look at why selling agents push you to these auctions and they want you to overpay. And then we also share with Scott's, obviously, experience how to control the buying process the way a professional does. So you're going to get a lot out of that next episode. And a nice little juicy topic at the end is we talk about real estate agents and the lies and the game playing that they actually go through, which you may not even be aware of, to manipulate you into paying that emotional premium. So stick around for part 2, and thanks for listening.